Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Beer Guys and the Sounds in Cinema podcast. The How Dare You podcast contains explicit language. You have been forewarned.
Blah, 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 blah. Blah. Bitch. Fuck. Bitch, fuck. Bitch, fuck. Okay.
My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man who believes we're watching the best of the Apes movie, as do I, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Hello, Tom.
Sick bay is almost empty except for a mauled fox cub, a deer with pneumonia, and a depressed gorilla. Now, there's a lot of comedy in this movie, and for me, it all lands.
Yes.
That's the secret of this movie, is the ability to transition into comedy without overdoing it.
Well, because the front half of this movie, is the comedy portion of the movie, and it's just gem after gem after gem.
Yeah.
And what's amazing to me is the ability for the movie to then transition into something else and still work.
Right. It's very organic. They mine the comic potential in the characters, in the story, and they always pull back from the brink when it gets too much.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as you say, a much darker movie kind of creeps up on you beautifully.
Yeah.
And then, it finds its place amongst the pantheon of 1970s science fiction.
I'll say.
Which is hopelessly bleak.
And I mean hopelessly.
It's really funny. I think I said in a previous episode that I've been watching the Behind the Planet of the Apes documentary. And interestingly enough, Ricardo Montalban has a great talking head interview in that, where he said, these endings were incredibly bleak, but by the time we got to Escape from the Planet of the Apes, the audience just accepted it because it was a series convention.
Uh-huh.
Like this is the third in a row. Nobody expected any different. And I find that fascinating. Like you formalize the idea of an unhappy ending, and
for your own audience.
Yeah, for your own audience.
Yeah.
And suddenly all the things we understand more generally about Hollywood cinema don't apply anymore. Like
That's
this
fantastic.
it's like an expectation. The audience
right.
seeking it out by going back to these movies, that like it would be a huge disappointment if we got anything else.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the 1971 film Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Directed by Don Taylor, Tom.
Yes.
He directed, movies we know. Tom Sawyer, the original Island of Dr. Moreau. Damien, The Omen 2. And if you remember this, The Final Countdown.
I don't remember that one, but Damien Omen 2 is a movie I've seen a lot of.
Yeah,
and
I'm sure.
Guy, it doesn't surprise. I didn't know that offhand, and it doesn't surprise me because in that same documentary I was talking about, he puts it perfectly. He said, "I inherited everything except the story. I lucked out. I got an original story."
Yeah.
So
right.
he understood how you negotiate old and new in a sequel.
I'll say.
Yeah.
Well, this movie has this is the high watermark, by the way. So we both think this is the best movie in the series. Rotten Tomatoes, for whatever it's worth, bears that out. 77% on Rotten Tomatoes. So this is the high watermark for the series. Well, for the sequels.
Yeah.
Budget of $2.5 million. In the USA and the world, $12.3 million. Spent 1 week at number one. Like I said, all of these movies had at least 1 week at number one in the box office.
Astounding. Yeah. And also, it was interesting because they remained popular, but they were slightly less popular each time.
Right.
Which the studio took as a cue to cut their budget by
Every time.
like half their budget every time. So we're dealing with another reduced budget here because they didn't get that original Planet of the Apes box office, which seems very cruel to me. But
right.
Because as we know now, the ability to keep a series successful is just like, you know, lightning in a bottle.
Mm-hmm. Well, but I guess the one thing they have going for them is the nature of the story, the actual plot of this movie.
They built
So
the story. They built the
Yeah.
story around minimizing, you know, the things that would
Right.
be expensive, like fantasy sets and ape
Right.
appliances.
Locations.
Yeah, they were basically from top to bottom. This movie is smart about everything it does. It's not too ambitious, but it's also not too conservative.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
right in the pocket.
Well, and right up front, we have an impasse because we got a cold open before the credits, baby.
Oh, listen, I have two separate anecdotes about this
Okay.
cold open, and I'm just gonna go into it.
I
Right.
love it, by the way. Like, the cold open, to me, masterstroke. God, I love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna blow your mind as to like a way of seeing this cold open that is even better than you would imagine.
All right.
Okay, my first anecdote is that is me when I did a Planet of the Apes marathon at my apartment back in England in 2000 and something. Again, like you, showing people who'd never seen these movies before, and it's like everything. And you know, we just finished Beneath the Planet of the Apes. We queued up Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
But you had to have at least a little talk about the batshit craziness of what you just saw, right?
Well, it was just like go straight from one to the other.
Okay.
And then one of the people who was there, my old friend Tom Hughes, just kind of turned to me and went, "Wait a minute, what is this movie going to be about?" Like it suddenly dawned on him as the movie was starting. You know, we get the lapping waves. It's like, what? Like, where and when is this movie? And you know, I said, guess. Where's this movie going to go now?
Right.
He had no foreknowledge, and he said, "Well, okay, what if Planet of the Apes is just one country and the other countries of the world are not Planet of the Apes?" And I responded by saying, "That is way better than what they came up with." And then just as I said that, the helicopter came into view. It was like, oh, okay. Got it.
That's amazing.
That's the first anecdote. The second anecdote is how I first saw this movie, which was late night on TV without knowing what the movie was, that it was an Apes movie, that it was this Apes movie.
I can't remember. Did you say you'd seen them all out of order, or had you seen the original first?
Yeah. This was. I think I saw Beneath and Battle, and then I think this was the next one. Conquest was the one I saw last.
Okay.
Just to
fuck it all up.
just to fuck up an already fucked up chronology.
Yeah, that's a real ape salad there.
But I had no idea what the movie was that was even starting, and so. When they lifted those astronaut heads and there were apes underneath, this is the optimum viewing condition for this movie. And I think in the early 70s you would have a better chance of wandering into the movie theater without having any preconceptions of what this was going to be. I mean, we're saturated with pre-publicity now with movies. It's like even the trailers of movies tell you everything you need to know about the plot going in. But that's just not the case. So it was something akin to that you're going in, seeing a cold open completely cold, which I don't think I've ever done anywhere else in my life. But that is the perfect way to see this, because I did not know what was going to be under that helmet. Like in a real sense, human, ape. I didn't even know what this movie was about. It could have been a surfing movie for all I know. Starting with the lapping waves, and the helicopter.
But it's funny because, I had the total opposite experience.
Yeah.
Where, you see, even when you just see the craft in the water, I'm like, oh, I know what's going on.
Well, I was trying to put, but I was also trying to put myself in the mindset of people who knew this was a Planet of the Apes movie, had seen the previous movie, and were trying to figure out what this would be.
Right.
And I assume they'd think that one of the astronauts came back in time, but it was still going to be a human astronaut when they took their helmet off, right? I mean, that's what I would go to, and I mean, you know, I love the fact we're back at the beach. Mm-hmm. So far, both sequels have begun here. It's a really nice way of, you know,
connective tissue
for two movies that don't make sense in a linear chronology.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But then, you know,
two movies that aren't connected almost at all.
But even better, it's then revealed to be a fake out because the sound of the lapping waves is replaced by the sound of a helicopter. So we go, you know, we're in modern day, and you know, they really milk this salvage operation.
Oh, it's
amazing. Because you know, they're just offsetting the gratification for the audience.
Yeah.
And you're literally at the end, you know, you would be going, what the hell is this going to be? And then there's all this unnecessary military protocol.
But I also had like the real sense almost immediately that we were going to be in a different movie, because for me, just seeing the army guys, totally basically they may as well have been doing the hut, 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 hut from Blues Brothers.
They also look like the cast of the Phil Silvers show, which probably would have been the reference point at the time, with M. Emmett Walsh's, you know, thick black rimmed glasses.
Right. Oh man, I just had the best chuckle.
And then again, the timing on, you know,
and the colonel who. Well, go ahead.
No, well, they take the astronauts' helmets off. It's revealed to be not only apes, but also apes we know.
Right. Yeah.
Cornelius and Seal is like a double surprise, and then immediately Jerry Goldsmith's
music,
funk soundtrack.
Yeah.
Comes straight in, and we have the credit over the credits of the leads are over their close-ups.
Yes.
I mean, every choice here is superb.
Well, yes, it's superb, but it just so smacks of television.
Yes.
At that time, you
That's
know,
true,
like
yes.
with the names over the actors themselves, and oh man,
it's also, I mean, you know, it's the return of Roddy McDowall, which for this series is a big deal. He sat the last movie out, so we know we're getting Roddy. It's a guarantee that we'll get actual Roddy McDowall, not just surrogate Roddy McDowall in the movie, and then we get into a sequence that is entirely silent, really. In terms of dialogue, but the music is doing all the heavy lifting.
Yeah,
and this score, I mean, Jerry Goldsmith, he gets accolades for his original Planet of the Apes score because it was way ahead of its time,
right?
In terms of using soundscapes rather than orchestral compositions. But here, the way, I think it's just as impressive the way he takes the basics of that score and then overlays music that was relevant.
And functifies it.
Yeah, well, he makes it relevant to 1972.
Yeah.
So we have funk, we have psychedelic music, and, you know, Latin guitar, which, interestingly, we get the licks of the Spanish guitar as Ricardo Montalban's name is on
I know.
Credits, which I think is,
exactly.
I mean, I don't know if that was fortuitous, but it works beautifully. And it just made me think about, in a modern movie, this scene would be full of, like, all that placeholder dialogue we saw in The Dark Knight. But they make the choice here to just use music to cover everything.
Well, the thing that occurs to me, especially when we watch older movies, because if this movie was made today, that scene would be 28 minutes.
You're right. You're right about that. And yeah, it's just, I mean, it's just a magnificent opening from top to bottom.
It's pitch perfect.
It is pitch perfect.
Like, I love the moment when they take their helmets off. We see that they're apes, and then the sort of look on the Colonel's face.
Well, even the look on their faces as well, like their confusion as to what's going on, because
And
that's the
Colonel
great.
just kind of,
It's like
and
everyone.
he's like, I gotta
is
call the president about this one.
everyone in the scene is reacting as the audience is. I think that's the key to it. It's like,
Right.
okay, this is the situation, but why? And the first third of the movie is really about coming to grips with this story U-turn we've taken. And you know,
'Cause we're going to the zoo.
we're going to the zoo where there is this depressed gorilla, which sounds like a. I mean, this is why, you know, again, I think, I don't know why we're slamming modern movies here, but I feel like if this was a terrible modern movie, they would have said the depressed gorilla line would have just been a throwaway. Nope, the depressed gorilla is one of the major players in this story.
Yeah, exactly. Like a major plot point.
And it's M. Emmett Walsh delivers that line, and again, he's not leaning into the comedy. And then when we get into the zoo,
I love the bit with the oranges.
I was just gonna say, Roddy McDowall again, not overplaying it, letting the comedy speak for itself.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, every time they hand him an orange, he puts one away and holds his hand out
and
again.
puts his paw out.
Yeah. And then they sit down.
But also with like a look on his face, like you could, because as an audience member, because you know that they can speak and that they're so intelligent and that they were the masters of their own universe, you can see behind his eyes. Yes. You know, it's just a masterstroke of performance from Roddy McDowall. It's amazing.
I think the only thing that lets this scene down is the Halloween costume gorilla.
Yes,
and,
exactly.
You know, you put that in context of the
because that gorilla looks like the Trading Places gorilla.
But it's it's a sad irony in a movie that is that has three of the best looking apes in cinema that when that they skimp in other areas,
right?
And but I mean, this is a complete refocus for the series as well, because Cornelius and Zira are now the stars of the franchise. And that's never. I mean, they were basically a cameo in the last movie,
right? So we have kind of role reversal.
Yeah. And we have a new ape character, played by a fairly big star, Sal Mineo from Rebel Without a Cause and Giant,
right?
And his name's kind of buried in the titles, and he has
he's Milo.
He has limited screen time,
right?
And apparently he hated being in the ape.
Spoiler alert!
Yeah, but
the gorilla gets him.
Yeah, but I mean, when it's just the three of them, that dynamic is so good between the three of them, and I always think it's a little bit of a shame that he's killed off so quickly in the movie. Yeah. But but you also know that the chemistry between Hunter and McDowall is so good that that's going to carry the movie too. So it's kind of win-win, because it needs to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
And we have to at least offset the discussion of what's happening.
Because the dynamic between them is so great, you'd like to have a little bit more of it, but you have to respect that this movie understands what it needs to do.
Right. I think that's the key to it. And immediately, again, like picking up from the last movie, where I think there was hints of the influence of feminism and the women's movement. Like, Zira's in charge from minute one of this movie.
Yeah.
And
I love the scene with the intelligence tests.
She remains I find those depressing, because I feel like I would struggle with some of those. My short-term memory is not that good. I know Zira's regarded as a scientific genius in her society.
In her own society.
But I find it she's still an ape, and I find it depressing that I would struggle with the same challenges, which are meant to be the most basic challenges you could give to an animal. But
well, the only one I felt I would struggle with was the second one.
Yeah.
The fight, like when it was like pointing to 4 blocks and now here's 30 blocks, find the blocks. But like putting the blocks away, I'm like, I could do that. Creating the thing to get the banana, I could do that. The first one where it's like, I'll show you 3, now here's 5, pick the 3, I could do that. But
we get our first black mark against the human race here, I think, with the Arthur the zookeeper.
Yeah.
Who the first thing he says is, female's a bit uppity.
Right.
And I like the fact that, you know, it's like they're using sexism as a way of like characterizing bad humans. I like that a lot. I mean, that's really
because I was just gonna say, I mean, it feels so purposeful.
Oh, it really does. And I mean, I think we alluded to this before, but in Beneath the Planet of the Apes, we had an archetypal surrogate, well, actually 2 archetypal surrogates. Here we have an archetypal inversion.
Yeah.
It's the mirror image of the original Planet of the Apes movie.
Right.
And the bigoted zookeeper is one of the first real signs of that. That we're going to flip everything on its head. We've already flipped the concept on its head.
Right.
But we're actually going to do that character to character as well. We're going to have a human equivalent of every ape and an ape equivalent of every human.
Because the 2 doctors they meet are essentially their counterparts. They're them.
2 sympathetic medical professionals.
Right, exactly.
Which I think is... it's great. You know, we already know that but there's also some great notes of continuity. We know that Zira's hot for human penis. From the first movie, and, you know, immediately she's like, I like you.
Yeah.
But this time, they up the ante because Cornelius joins in. I mean, no surprise there. Roddy McDowall's back. But, you know, it's he's straightened it. I have from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. Don't think for a second I didn't. I always did.
Yeah, and they walk later on in the movie. It's great. They walk back that misremembering from the previous movie about Taylor. So in the previous movie, he says, "We love Taylor." This one, he says, "We learned to love Taylor."
Right.
And I think it's like a screenwriter at some point. It's like, it was Charlton Heston, and he was difficult.
He was a bit of a dick.
He was difficult to work with.
All right. Let's take our first break, and then we're going to come back and we'll talk Presidential Commission.
Oh, yeah.
Love it.
I can't wait to get into the president.
All right. We'll be right back, everybody.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had 1, maybe 2 craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing the Don Taylor film, Escape from the Planet of the Apes. So when we last left, Tom, we were saying we were going to talk Presidential Commission.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just another scene I love.
Yeah, another great inversion. They have three human actors who look just like the 3 apes who try Taylor in the original movie, and they have them posed exactly the same.
The same,
sort of,
right.
Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil formation from the original movie.
Exactly.
And we have a human Dr. Zaius in Dr. Hassline. I mean, that's made abundantly clear that he is the human version of Zaius, given his role in the government and his later villainy.
And he's good.
You know, I tell you what, and I haven't mentioned James Bond for a while. If
for a while, we're 23 minutes into the episode.
For some, you know, by some bizarre
everybody drink.
For some bizarre copyright reason, the European copyright on James Bond expired in the 70s, this would be my choice for the guy to play.
Oh yeah,
and like a Middle European James Bond. Later in the movie, where the way he handles that tape recorder in the cigarette case, so smooth. That could have been his screen test for James Bond. It's better than Sam Neill's.
See, but I think he'd also be a great Bond villain.
He's just excellent, and even before that, I mean, this series is good at these offbeat supporting characters or interesting supporting characters, rich supporting characters. But we get a ton of them in this movie. And the first one for me is the president himself, who I think is just, I mean, it's actually overall a really balanced version of, you know, a commander-in-chief. And once Watergate happens, you won't get that kind of balance again in American cinema for a while. This is sort of the last stand of the idea that politicians kind of care about things like facts and diplomacy, but we still see that kind of self-interest at the same time. So it's a really interesting, rich portrayal of a commander-in-chief, like a kind of Martin Sheen, you know, West Wing kind of thing. It's like it's all the tensions of that role kind of put together. But I love the fact that he finds the most entertaining way to tell the Joint Chiefs about the existence of talking apes. He could have told them in any possible way, and he does the most entertaining version of that.
We'll tell our audience what he does.
Well, he waits until he waits until the very end to reveal that the astronauts. He just keeps calling them the astronauts until the very end, till the last possible moment that he reveals that they're talking apes.
It's great.
It's just. And then we get that round the world news buffet, which is again like everything in this movie. It's nearly Airplane, but it just pulls back at the brink.
Yeah,
because it's actually it's fairly necessary.
Because we're ensconced at the beginning of this movie in the comedic portion of this movie, and so much of. And that's what, because you can see the clear parallel to the first movie with that presidential commission.
Yes.
But what I love about it is it's the opposite completely, in the sense that the people who are being tried are also charming people to an extent that the people in the gallery are getting up and clapping for them.
Yeah.
You know, it's wonderful.
It is. Yeah. So everything's a little bit romanticized.
Yeah. Right.
But you're also aware of the danger beneath that.
It's kind of like the apes are Gidget. Seeing the city, you know?
Oh no, it's both Gidget. Oh, it works on 3 levels. It's Gidget. It's a way of intradiegetically talking about how the popular celebrity of the Planet of the Apes movies has kind of captivated American culture, which is, you know, what this movie did. And also, you know, the scenes of them being taken around Los Angeles are taken from the original Pierre Boulle novel.
Oh, okay.
Monkey Planet. They're based on, you know, that's exactly what happens when the human goes to the Planet of the Apes. He's kind of taken around and becomes a celebrity. So they were specifically basing it on
that.
On actual events from that novel.
Oh, I love the clothing montage, buying clothes montage.
I think it's great.
I had no idea that women could just sit on a couch as other women tried on the clothes for them and modeled them.
Yeah. Well, at least that's what Hollywood tells me happens.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, in movies like Funny Face. I don't know how close that is to reality. We'll have to ask a woman. That could be a new segment. Ask a woman. Boy, do we need that segment.
Right.
And yeah, I once we get to we're aware that this media appropriation is kind of fickle, it's superficial.
Yeah, right.
And we get those hints of where this is going to break down. You know, Hasline cottoning on to Zira nearly saying that she dissects humans in front of the world's press and a presidential commission. You know, it's like, and that's so subtly placed that you almost forget about it, and you realize.
Well, they're going to bring it back.
It's a trail of breadcrumbs for this movie becoming something very, very different and much more serious.
Yeah.
Here's where they also flesh out the idea of how they're here in the first place. Or in the last place.
So this is the one thing that's completely batshit crazy about this movie. It's just the whole premise of how this happened. You know, like, you can't ignore the idea that apparently Brent shows up.
Right.
They send him away, and then I guess they must have immediately gone to the Forbidden Zone.
I was just going to say, in my headcanon, Brent shuts the door of Cornelius' Zira house,
like,
and Milo comes in through the back door because there isn't a second to spare.
Yeah, exactly. It
says, "Guess what I found in the ocean?"
Yeah.
Like real sitcom style. Oh, Milo.
Milo, what is this?
Milo and his crazy schemes.
And just the idea that they would, that they have the fortuity to know that they're going to go searching for the bomb, that the bomb will, of course, the Earth Destroyer will destroy the Earth, and that they have to get on a plane and travel back in time.
This is actually That's
a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot, but in its defense, firstly, it's all relative. This is actually the least retconny part of this movie.
Right.
Because of what happens later. For me, it's not that it doesn't make sense, it's that the timeline is too crushed to be plausible.
Right, exactly.
But that's true on both sides. Like, we're in, present day 1972, and 3 years ago, they sent the most advanced spaceship ever. The likes of which we've still not seen now into space.
Mm-hmm.
So the timelines are crushed on both sides to make this story work, which I don't mind so much.
I don't mind at all, but
you have to sort of do. But what I love about what it does is, first, let's not forget, it's taken a film series that had literally nowhere to go
and took it somewhere.
And took it somewhere. But also, rather than them sort of, because you could see a version of this in which they forgot about the nuclear blast or tried to talk about it as little as possible because of the narrative problems it causes.
Halloween.
They actually do the opposite.
Right.
In that they make the nuclear blast that happened in the last movie and will happen in the future of this movie is where all the stakes in the movie come from.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what makes Hasline want to take those two apes out of commission. And it's so it's bold in many ways, and it's bold. It pushes the boundaries of plausibility. It defies logic in terms of continuing a series that had nowhere to go, and it brings a plot point that causes nothing but trouble into play as the most important thing in the movie.
Right.
It's astounding. It's a magic trick of screenwriting.
It really is.
And it was it was crazy that they were asked to do a sequel, but the studio had no compunction doing it, and the burden was all on them to find a way to do it. And this is the best possible
and a way
solution.
they did. Yeah, they found a way.
So it's just kind of micro liberties with the timeline. that keeps the last movie in canon,
but it also,
which is the amazing part to me.
Right.
Like,
so it keeps.
I
with
would
the
just
last
take that
movie.
out of canon.
Yeah.
And move on, but they don't even do that.
But what I like about it is not only does it keep with the last movie, but it keeps with the tone of the beginning of this movie.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's this moment where you think to yourself, now wait a second, how could they and what? And then you imagine Roddy McDowell putting his paw out for the orange, and you're like, you know what? I don't even care.
Yeah. and you know, there's a sense of, you know, everyone's confused.
Right.
The apes are confused as why they're there. The people are very confused as to why there are apes, talking apes from the future. So it's like we're all in the same boat. I think that's why it works. Is because we're all have the same level of incomprehension. Both audience and characters.
Yeah. And considering what's going to happen in the next movie, in terms of justifications, this is nothing.
That's right. Or even later on in this movie. You know, another great addition here is that, like, it's not quite, we're not quite in paradox territory yet. But there's a few hints of I will continue to call paradoxical continuity, which is the next 3 movies are basically all that. Dr. Hassline.
This is another phrase where.
Well, yeah, but it only applies to the series.
Cementing.
This and maybe the Terminator movies.
Yeah, we don't know that for sure.
Dr. Hassline. Named the Hassline curve, which took Taylor and Brent into the future. So the whole reason that the apes are here is because of something that is named after Dr. Hassline.
Right,
so
yeah.
We're already getting the sense that time is sort of becoming cyclical in the storytelling in this franchise. And they do that in a really neat way. And then they try to explain time travel to the viewer.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they're entirely successful. I personally think they've gone with the wrong metaphor. Or they've led with the wrong metaphor. Of a painter looking at a picture
of a painting.
A painting of a painting. To me, I don't know how you feel about this, but the idea of infinite regression seems to be utterly irrelevant to anything that's happening here.
In the moment, I so appreciated this attempt. Like, I so appreciated the attempt.
It's education for education's sake, and I love that aspect of it.
Yes, exactly.
But it has nothing to do with how the apes got here. It's a distraction. It's a big distraction. But it's one that leaves you a better human being who's more, more educated, more
But just
learning.
the idea of, the idea of the person doing the painting becomes the observer and the observed.
Right.
Is sort of the climax of that speech.
Yeah.
And then you go, yeah. Wait, how's that?
How does that explain anything?
Yeah.
Well, they just buried the lead. We spend a lot of time on that. We have a very complex diagram, a very complex piece of painting art to describe it. We get a long lecture from Dr. Hassline, and then at the end they say, well, time is like an infinite number of highways with an infinite number of exits. I'm like, that's all I needed to know.
Exactly.
Like Jules in Pulp Fiction. That's all I needed to know. But yeah, I love the digression that,
I was delighted.
What I love about these movies is they take the time to educate you about unfamiliar concepts. That's what science fiction is all about. But
they also do it in
it's not really playing into the
5
story.
minutes.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. It's amazing. They take the time, but they don't bog down in it.
No.
Here's this for you. We're moving on.
We're moving. But the only thing you need to know is this idea of, we've
lots of highways. Like time is relative.
But I mean, this gets muddy as the movies go on because there's a way in which you could look at this movie as already part of its own alternate timeline.
Yeah.
And it makes more sense, but I don't think that's what they were going for.
No, I don't think so either.
Because, there's a theory of time travel in which you are part of whatever history you create by going back in time.
Right.
But I just don't think... I just think it's unsophisticated in some of the details, and I think that's more of an illusion. But it's a really great moment. But I just love the fact that it falls back, even with this very sophisticated analysis of infinite regression.
Yeah.
To the point where you could tell other people about infinite regression. Which is, of course, the purpose of education.
Right.
You become the teacher.
Yeah.
But then it all comes down to that Star Trek, let's come up with the most everyday metaphor we can think of. Like taking air out of a balloon.
A balloon.
It's an
right.
infinite number of highways within it. It's like, that's all you really needed, but we've gone like the most scenic route to get there.
Well, what's great is that you're going down a rabbit hole, but the rabbit hole's like 20 feet long. You're,
Yeah.
And you find your little bar of gold at the bottom, and you're like, oh, this is great. I'll go back.
I hadn't thought about this before, but I wonder if it is an attempt to kind of like, in the same way that Ricardo Montalban scares away the police with his parade of animal facts later in the movie, whether it is just an attempt to sort of overwhelm the audience's brain to the point where it just, their logic just fuses and they accept.
Shut down.
That this is all possible.
Yeah, exactly. Shut down and accept. Oh, that's amazing.
I love, it's at this point we get Zira talking back to the television.
Yeah. They
is great. I mean, you don't need... I mean, my gran used to do that, so I don't see what's so ridiculous about it. But, what's really good about this is it's kind of like... You said it's, it's like television, and this reminds me of like the classic fish out of water comedy, a sort of northern exposure. They've kind of taken the basic idea of a stranger in a strange land, which is its own kind of sci-fi subgenre.
Right.
But at least for the first half of its movie, it's played in a more situational comedy style.
Right.
And works incredibly well because...
Well, and don't you feel like there's sort of a bridging between the two stories when she starts drinking, too? Because there's this sort of idea of... Because she's pregnant, too. And what
the pregnancy and the alcohol, yeah. I think that's when it starts to turn for me, absolutely.
Yeah. But you also have the sense, because it's... who is it that gives her the... Is it...
Hassline gives her...
He gives her... I was going to say, Hassline gives her the first...
Well, originally it's... I can't remember his name.
What do they call it? Grape Juice Plus?
Grape Juice Plus. Originally it's...
For me,
it's Human like Cornelius who gives it to her originally, but he's the one who gives it to her to make her talk.
Right.
In a sort of... and lies to her and says, this will help your baby grow.
Yeah.
Which
is so evil.
He's like, it's great. Like, you come out of it going, I think he's worse than Dr. Zaius.
Yeah.
Everything.
Well, that's what I was just going to say, because you have this real sense of not him just corrupting their innocence, but the baby inside her too. Yeah.
It's really interesting though, because at least in this movie, they're trying to they shade everyone really well and really complexly. And Hassline's no exception. Later on in the movie, he tells us why he's doing this, and his motivations are entirely altruistic.
Yeah.
He says, we need to be activists. This is activism. This is the same as saving the environment to me.
Yeah.
And that shading.
Well, it's almost
it
kind
didn't
of
need
like,
to be there, but
to me, I made more of the connection between the apes kind of being like global climate change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's what he's attacking. He's trying to
which kind of
and it's that same effect of like we have to do this now, now.
Which is absolutely, he's dead on. Even in 72, he's like dead on about those issues, and it makes you think, oh well, is he right about what he's doing to what he wants to do to Cornelius and Zira?
Well, but we're gonna find out over the course of the two movies of like, well,
Yeah.
But I want to save that for Conquest because man, that's
and one of the things that I think also allows this I don't say just comedy, it's like a lighter approach to the same subject matter that makes it work is we haven't forgotten about satire. Like, it's still grounded in satire and allegory. I love the fact that when the military first come to the zoo, it's very clearly coded as, generational conflicts between different eras of American.
Yeah.
We have this uptight World War II old
guy,
and then these long-haired
and
vegetarians.
Then the doctors. Yeah, right.
Women are in charge.
Yeah.
And it, like, immediately you see that's grafted. That there's a great moment in the presidential commission where, they concede that these are, intelligent beings, and a priest starts, like, raises his hand and he says, "We'll get to that later, Your Eminence." And it's like it's paying lip service to the sort of, how much religious satire matters in the previous two movies, but it does so in a very fun way that is no less interesting.
Yeah.
And I think even with Grape Juice Plus and, the use of alcohol to sort of loosen Zira's tongue, immediately I'm thinking about, the way that colonialists used alcohol to corrupt indigenous people, both in America and, in all indigenous cultures all around the world. It's the same story everywhere. You give indigenous people whiskey and cigarettes and you just destroy their civilization.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely there. That's underlying all of this. But it's done in this slightly frothier way that is no less grounded in all the sort of themes and ideas and that kind of allegorical style of storytelling that we're used to in the series.
Well, and that's what's remarkable to me,
works.
because all the things we're talking about feel so purposeful, and there's such thought behind it, but behind the veneer of, like you said, this sort of Three's Company kind of like, sitcom
I'm gonna
beginning.
Make it after
Yeah,
all.
exactly.
Yeah,
Before the movie turns, and turns it does. But let's talk about the turn it takes after. Well, let's take a break, and then we'll talk about the dark turn this movie does take. All right, we'll be right back. If you like podcasts like I do, boy, do I have a treat for you. You need to
stay on target
and check out the Sounds and Cinema podcast. Listen as your host, sound designer and music creator Tony Parham, and co-host, musical performer and sound lover Derek Hansen, D-Rock if you're nasty, and I am, discuss all things sound related to film, television, stage, and theatrical productions. They discuss environmental sounds, bioacoustics, dialogue, the nature of communication through sound, but as an added bonus, they drink beer and try to
stay on target.
Find them wherever you get your podcasts and listen to the pure mania of a man who can charitably be described as Doug, the dog from Up, and another man with a soothing and sultry voice trying to get that man to
stay on target.
That's the Sounds and Cinema podcast. Tune in and listen to the sounds they are creating just for you. And we are back once again, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing Escape from the Planet of the Apes, the 1971 almost perfect sequel.
Classic.
So good.
The classic sequel and version before it was classic.
Before it was like what we do.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that cold open, it made me start to wonder, like, when did cold open start becoming a thing?
Probably right then.
1971. If this was the first movie to do a cold open, it would make me so happy.
Yeah, I think it's my operational theory is that the sequel Cold Open comes out of the same tendency of putting a big chunk of the last movie
In the
at the beginning of the next one. It's a sort of outgrowth of that, is what I think, because it's usually the cold open is about mediating between the previous movie and the new movie.
Sure.
But we'll work on that. We have the
we
time
got plenty
and the
of time.
resources to turn that into into a literal equation at some point.
That's funny. Well, so when we last left, we said the movie takes a bit of a dark turn right around the interrogation scene. Yes. I mean, you have hints of it before that, but now we're knee deep in baddies being bad.
To me, there's a couple of turning points where you get the sense that the comic tone is sort of dissipating. The prize fight with Cornelius.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about that.
Which is one of the scenes that's taken directly from Pierre Boulle's novel.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, obviously flipped, so it's
of course
humans fighting, not apes fighting. But the Cornelius's reaction seems much more sincere.
Yeah.
Yes. And then when Zira faints in the museum, and she reveals that she's pregnant. I mean, she's already walking around, lots of stuffed apes. And stuffed animals, so it's already a little bit dark, a little bit the sheen is kind of disappearing a little bit.
Sure.
And from that point onwards, I think it's actually, I mean, in terms of screenwriting, it's a great move, because at this point the plot is spinning its wheels.
Yeah.
We're just getting different variations of the same set pieces, so the movie knows that this is the exact time to change gears.
Right.
And it does it brilliantly, because from then on, the lighter part of the movie just sort of recedes into the background. We never see the press again. Everything is done behind closed doors. Like, every aspect of the movie that was fun and light is just slowly disappearing out of view. And it's lovely. It's great screenwriting.
Well, and then, because within this, you also get this speech from Cornelius about Aldo, which is going to present problems later.
Yes,
in the series.
Is that what he says? I thought he said Milo. See,
no, because Milo's their child.
Right.
But he says Aldo said no.
Oh.
And then they ignore it. But keep that name within the series.
But Aldo doesn't say no. He just slaps the shit out of someone who did.
Well, what I'm saying is Aldo is Caesar. But they decide not to use the name Aldo.
Yeah.
And Milo is
Caesar.
Is Caesar, right. But right. Should be Aldo.
Okay, well, so I mean, they do something which they do at least once in each of these movies, which is when they're recapping previous movies, they sneak in a new piece of mythology.
Exactly.
Just under the wire, so you almost don't notice
it. They pull the rug out from something that they said in the last movie and change it to something different.
I mean, there's a big revelation here, is the pet plague.
So I don't even remember.
It's really
about
like
it
they don't
movie.
make a big
I just
thing
remember
of
it from the next movie. So when do they talk about the pet plague?
There's a rover memoriam in the next one,
it's great.
So it's a bit more on the nose.
It's amazing.
But here to me, the biggest lack of fit in the mythology here is that Cornelius somehow knows both that that apes descended from humans, and that knowledge is freely available to him, and both of those things were not the case in the original Planet of the Apes.
Right.
The religious authorities forbade that knowledge, suppressed it, and apes in general
did not know,
had no awareness that they were descended from humans. So, it's a total.
But is that what you were referencing for the pet plague?
No, they say no. That in part of his as part of his history, he says, "Oh yeah." As part of that narrative, he says dogs and cats died out, and apes got you know, and that's how apes got close to humans.
Wow.
And we're in a position to take them over. So they plant that seed there, and then
see,
the next movie
I didn't even pick up on that, and I mean, we'll get there when we get there with Conquest, but the speech that Ricardo Montalban has to give, I just thought, and I want to save it, but.
Yeah, but I like, so despite rewriting the history of the franchise, which is, you know, not good, and remember this is still pre-VHS, so, you know, there's not the same, you don't have that same reference to go back to
over and over again
easily.
Yeah,
even if you're a screenwriter. But what they're doing here is essentially laying out the next two movies. So this is the sense we get that instead of trying to constantly kill off the franchise, which is what they did in the last movie, they're actually planning ahead this time, anticipating that the studio's going to ask them to do a sequel, and they won't have written themselves into an enormous corner.
Do you think that's it, or do you think they went back, watched this movie, and said, "Hey, I know what we could talk"? Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, I know that was specifically behind the scenes. That was why they did. That was why they had a, you know, that's why the movie has a plot twist at the end. They wanted to anticipate the studio asking them for a sequel rather than killing off the franchise, then the studio asking them for a sequel and them not having anywhere to go.
Gotcha.
So they're like laying out the next two movies almost, you know, in pitch form.
Mm-hmm. Like they're us.
And again, the problem is, as you've laid out, they just shouldn't have been so specific.
Yeah.
With the details. Because there's like, they've mentioned things that are going to hamstring the future films. And we even get a, you know, classic Imbass, before it was classic, recapping footage from the first two movies. In sepia, as if this is the past, when it is in fact the future.
Yeah, exactly.
And that adds nothing. I mean,
happening in their past, not happening in the actual past.
And, you know, again, I give them the benefit of the doubt because, you know...
It's that temporal thing again.
You can't freely access those movies in the way that you could now, so it's a bit more justified than when we see exactly the same thing done in a modern-day movie.
Right, yeah.
I think it is like... There's more value to it when people literally cannot get a hold of the movies to see. So I you know, I'll give it a pass, but it adds nothing.
Exactly.
that we've not already talked about, and it's best not to remember certain aspects of it because we're retconning a lot of it.
Well, and then the moment that you know that this movie is really going to go somewhere different is when Cornelius actually does kill a human.
Yeah, and it's like that. I really like if you're watching this movie not aware of it's gonna go, you won't see that massive gaping head wound coming.
No, exactly.
I mean, we're back at, you know, Brent being shot in the head, kind of territory. It's that level of
because I went,
violence.
Holy shit!
Yeah, and I think that's and so I, you know, it's a really interesting game that these movies play because they have a push, you know, they go to these extreme ends of violence and gore, and then they within a kind of G-rated framework, which, you know, up until this point these movies are all G-rated. But it's this constant push and pull between them, and this movie has that push and pull figured out, I think.
Absolutely.
I think they overdo the friendly side early on in the movie with the gorilla attack.
Mm-hmm.
We cut to a montage of the animals in the zoo reacting, which again is nearly Naked Gun, but just pulls back at the last minute. I would have liked to have seen more of that, but I understand why they did it in that part of the movie, to kind of move away from that, because it's, you know, in sequence it's like 10 minutes after Charlton Heston, you know, everyone dies and the world blows up.
Yeah.
In sequence. So I see why they want to move away from it, but it's a bit too, you know, sensorial, I think, to sort of just see the animals reacting to it. Whereas this, you know, violence comes back with a bang here, and it's the template for the rest
and
of
it's
the movie.
yeah, exactly. It's the jumping off point. And you know when a movie is great? A movie is great when you see a name that you know, like Ricardo Montalban in the credits. And you're not ever thinking about, hey, where the fuck is Ricardo Montalban?
Yeah.
Because when he shows up in this movie, my note is Ricardo Montalban, exclamation point. Yay! Like I had totally forgotten he was in this movie because I was so immersed in what was happening.
The most romanticized circus owner
Ever.
I've ever. He's the most animal-loving person in the film. I guess that's part. You know, that's part of the level of irony that this and sort of absurdity that this movie's worked upon. That, you know, in our current, in, you know, 1972, the person who is most for animal rights is the person who oppresses animals the most.
Right. Exactly.
Historically. So
well,
I guess
and not just that, because it goes a step further, because everybody that works for him is familial. They all love each other. It's like hello and hello.
I don't think these are the conditions that people working within circuses
I don't
experience
think so.
on a daily basis.
But that romanticized idea of him works so well for the movie itself.
And beyond his role in the movie, which is crucial, this and the next movie, I just like the fact that he's painted as this complete bore. Like, he's just got with his animal facts that can scare off police officers. It's just, you know, like there's it's very dangerous when you do allegory that your characters become a symbol rather than a character.
Mm-hmm.
And at least in this movie, and I think the other movies too, the characters in these movies never become that. There's always that genuine, there's the sense of an individual character to everybody, and an emotional core and connection between everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's from this movie onwards. I don't think Beneath or even the original Planet of the Apes have that. But I think recentering the movie around a married couple is the big difference here. Like, from this point onwards, it will all be about close emotional relationships that will carry these movies. And
it's a little interesting too that the humans in this movie, they go steps further to help the apes in this movie, Zira and Cornelius, than Zira and Cornelius ever did for Taylor.
Yes.
You know, they help them escape from the military institute. They take them to Ricardo Montalban. I mean, they're doing everything.
They get one extra kiss.
Yeah, exactly.
For their trouble.
Right.
Should mention as well, Human Cornelius and Zira, one of them is played by Natalie Trundy, who even beats Roddy McDowall's record for being in every single one of these sequels.
Yeah, right.
And she was married to Arthur P. Jacobs, who is the producer of these movies.
Oh, I didn't know that.
She recalls at some point during pre-production of all of these sequels, Arthur would walk into the living room and go, "Natalina," and she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be in an Apes movie."
That's amazing.
Isn't that great? Is that a great story?
Oh, that's so
That's exactly how I assumed it played out, and apparently it played out exactly that way in real life. It's like, you're not busy, right?
So good.
And I believe that that he was dating Linda Harrison. So
wow.
Both Nova and Natalie Trundy in all her various roles in these movies came from romantic connections with the producer,
Dr. Stephanie Branton. Branton?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what's his name? The male doctor is in Piranha as well. That's the other big connection I noticed.
Yeah, Bradford something, Dill House, or I forget. What's his last name?
Well, I like Bradford Dillhouse. I
don't think it's Dill House, but it's Dill something.
I don't think it's Dill... Thrill House. Well, then we have a retcon of the retcon. So we made a big deal about how apes evolved to speak And then, you know, in the birthing scene, Cornelius just says, "You know, primitive apes can't speak." It's like, well, which is it? I mean, this is just like, and I gotta say that the movies as a whole never really solved that dilemma.
No.
There's no scientific explanation for how apes learn speak, and everyone says different things about that.
Well, even the amount of time there is between conquest and battle does not seem to indicate that there's enough time for all these apes to be speaking.
And if it does, it doesn't suggest there's enough time to produce a person like an ape like Virgil.
Right.
I think that's the
exactly
difference.
Right.
I love that everyone is still like we don't really talk about it, but everyone's motivated by ape racism.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like this, the ape society is incredibly racist, and everyone just kind of deals with it and reinforces it. Even Armando's like, "I like chimpanzees, best of all."
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, come on,
I know, right?
And you're the guy who's supposed to be on their side.
What about he's
really...
like, "Fuck the orangutans."
Yeah. Oh, I'm going back a little bit, but I wanted just to put this out there.
Mm-hmm.
When did movies start talking about baby Hitler, and was it before this?
That's so interesting.
Because that's pretty commonplace now to use the baby Hitler idea to talk about, you know, moral time travel.
Yeah, right.
But I don't know when that started, but this seems early for that. As with everything that happens in this movie, it seems early.
I was just gonna say, you know, put into your Google search "baby Hitler."
Yeah.
Who knows?
Oh, I don't want to do that again. I'm not doing that again. I still can't get those pop-ups away. I kind of, I both like and dislike it when Cornelius says, "I'm an archaeologist." I like it because it's a great line, well delivered. It's funny because they're showing him how to use a map. He's like, no, I'm an archaeologist.
Yeah.
But I feel like this would have come up before.
You wanted him to don his hat and his bullwhip?
No, no. I feel like it's a kind of line that should have been earlier in the movie when they were getting to know each other.
Yeah, right.
That it just doesn't. It resets all the progress that they've all made.
Well,
and then we get
I mean, this is a minor thing, but within the narrative, you know, they're escaping. They're going over the mountain. They're trying to get to the ship.
Yeah.
And by ship, I mean boat.
Boat, yeah. Disused boat.
Yeah, and for no reason whatsoever, like, Zira's walking along and the baby starts crying, and her solution to the baby is crying is to put down her bag.
I have a theory about this. So
really, just so the government could find them, so we could get to the fucking end of this movie. But
it's a plot convenience. Yeah. But beyond that, I think it's about being in a phase where we want to represent women more positively and proactively, but we're still falling back on that sexist writing tendency of women are the characters who fuck everything up for the other characters.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, you still see that in like Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's like we're still cursed with that screenwriting tendency. So I think that's, aside from pure plot convenience, it's like there's no other way that they could find these apes.
Yeah.
So it's like it's just a slight undercutting of Zira as a feminist hero.
Right.
It's like she is, but she's also a woman, so she's a big klutz.
And she's gonna fuck it up.
Yeah. But this disused shipyard denouement.
Oh man!
I mean, it's one of the bleakest things I've ever seen in any movie.
Fucking dark.
It's like something out of a 1970s crime thriller.
My note is, holy fucking tragedy ending.
Well, it's like, first of all, we've changed genres again.
Yeah.
Because this is like a gangster film.
This is total. Now. Yeah, exactly. This is.
It's like the ending of Get Carter. You know, it's fucking horrible. And just as grim.
Top of the world, Ma.
one last. They can't resist one last jab at social commentary with Zira saying, "Is that what man wanted oil for, to kill fish?"
Yeah.
Great. Oh, and we have I thought it was interesting they didn't have the stomach or the budget to try and visualize an ape birth.
Yeah.
And we have a real chimpanzee.
Yeah, right.
We have a terrible circus chimp in a Halloween costume with a real chimpanzee. But I mean, every time I see this movie, I think, first of all, I think it's great. Like, having a real chimpanzee and everything just makes it feel,
real.
It's a better balance of the ape makeup and the reality. What must that chimp be thinking?
Oh man. And I mean,
this baby chimp, who's like, one of his formative experiences is he has these evolved ape parents.
Yeah, because
it's like, how do you send him back to his mother after that?
Exactly. So for those that don't know, within the narrative, Armando's, like, one of his actual gorilla has given birth. So has Zira, and they've switched the babies.
Well, it's a chimp.
It's
a chimp. Yeah.
And
they probably notice if it was a gorilla. As we know, everyone is racist towards apes.
Right.
Even apes.
Exactly.
Especially
I guess I was thinking of the zoo gorilla earlier.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look that different from the zoo gorilla.
Because it looks almost as big. But so they've switched babies so that their baby is safe. But that still means that a real-life chimp is just shot to shit with machine gun fire, followed by Cornelius getting shot, falling over the fucking rail of the ship to the bottom, and just like a mind-numbing crushing of the body, because you see that fall, and then Zira crawling over to his dead body and laying on top of it. Good night, nurse.
I have exactly that same note. Like, I said, repeated shooting of a baby chimp.
Oh man!
In many ways, this is light affair, but at its core, the despair of the series remains. I'm not sure what they were going for with Cornelius's Donald Duck death throes. I'm not sure if they pulled off what they were trying to do there. I suppose. I mean, the ending. It's relentlessly bleak, and that just massacring a baby chimp is just horrible.
Oh man,
it's another bleak, murderous ending where everyone dies.
Yeah.
Or the main cast die, which can't be understated enough. This doesn't happen in most Hollywood movies,
right?
Where the entire cast dies.
Everyone you know and love is dead.
But I guess the twist that beyond this means that there is something. There's like a twist of optimism.
Right.
Here.
Yeah. Because I mean, you don't find out that they switched the chimps until the last seconds of the movie.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is the kind of that's the note of optimism, but
such as it is,
such as it is, and it's an excellent last second twist. Does its job of keeping a possibility of a sequel alive.
Right, yeah.
It's really good storytelling. The reverse footage is not good filmmaking, but I don't know how else you get a chimp to talk.
Yeah.
That is a real chimp, but there's probably a better way than that. But they just hadn't found it out yet.
Well,
so yeah, it's fascinating.
I mean, what can I say? That is Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Anything left for you? Do you have There's not really a lot of credits at the end of these movies.
No, as we said, there's about 4 names in the credits, but which is the way it should be as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
But I appreciated the credits in Beneath the Planet of the Apes are silent,
mm-hmm.
and here we have ominous music.
Right.
kind of has that soundscapey quality
but it sticks with the tone of the last half of the movie.
Yeah. But you know, like having some music means it's a little more hopeful than, you know, the vast abject vacuum of
this much
hope
maybe
we have in the...
It's not the cold vacuum of space.
The Earth is still here.
Yeah, right.
Okay, guys?
It's the best we could do. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for Escape from the Planet of the Apes. If you think there's something we missed, please find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. We want to hear from you. We will shout you out. Give us, your declarations. Give us your rankings. We want to know which one you love best. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, I am Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Say goodbye, Tom.
We've met hundreds since we've been here, and I trust 3.
Yeah. Great line. All right, everyone, stay tuned.
The 1970s, everyone.
So great.
Time.
Conquest of the Planet of the Apes coming up next. We'll be seeing you, or you'll be hearing us soon.